Alright guys, so while my next video is uploading, I thought I'd just go ahead and make this short-ish video. I'm going to try not to make it too long. Basically about how I record and edit and upload my videos, for the most part, currently. So I currently use OBS, you can see here. I have a couple of profiles saved. The only thing that profile is going to do is save your recordings under a certain folder. You have to manually change that if you want to change it, if you want to save your file to a different folder, such as like if you want to keep it separated by game like I do, you have to have one profile set for one game, a different profile for a different game. And it's annoying because you have to try to make sure your settings across all the different profiles kind of match as far as like resolution, bit rates and all that in order to be consistent, which is one thing that I think OBS could improve on, is having different, like streamlining that experience. Because I know with GeForce Experience, it's automatic. Like it'll record and it's recording to its own folder per game or to the desktop folder or whatever. So in the settings here, output, recording, because I don't stream with OBS, I use Streamlabs OBS for that. With recording, I use the advanced output mode, standard type. You can see the recording path here is what your profile will be saved to, so I just call this profile other. It's for when I'm doing talking videos like this, or I'm using a game or playing a game or recording a game that it's not already have a profile set for. MP4 format because it's most familiar to me. 2 audio tracks here I've selected because that way it'll separate the desktop or game audio from my mic audio. And that's important later. Using the NVIDIA encoder, and here's all my settings at the bottom. I have a constant bit rate, 25,000 kilobits per second. Keyframe interval 2, max quality, high profile, look ahead, psycho-visual tuning is on, GPU 0, max keyframes 2, whatever that means. I looked up a couple of tutorials and that's apparently the best settings you can do. So like I said, I have 2 audio tracks here. So in the audio tab, I have both track 1 and track 2 maxed out bitrate wise at 320. For audio, sample rates maxed out at 48 kilohertz, stereo channel. Desktop audio is just my headset, the Arctis 7 from SteelSeries. The mic is the Yeti mic. I didn't change anything down here. Video, I'm using 1440p for the canvas and scale resolution. However you say that word, for maximum down scaling filter, and then 60 fps as the max you can do for just about anything. Under advanced, I've got above normal priority for OBS because sometimes it'll kind of hiccup a bit, and I'm trying to make sure I minimize that, so that's above normal. Color format is maxed out, or is NV12. Color space is maxed out at 709. Color range is full. Those were not preset. I had to change those, and that's supposed to be a like ideal setup. And then you can see here, so I had the scene game capture. Usually I just added this display capture today to capture my desktop background for this video. It'll show you the two audio it's detecting. So right now I'm talking to the mic, it's detecting that. Anytime audio is playing on the desktop, it'll show it there. And I have Alt X hotkeyed as my start and stop recording. So I'll move that back over here. So now, okay, and then as far as camera that you're seeing, or you're seeing me from, I'm using the Canon Vizia RF R700 camcorder currently, which is 1080p 60 frames, I'm pretty sure. And I'm using 128 gig SSD, which records a good amount. I've only ran out of space once, which you've seen in a previous video, and that was when we played like a solid 8 or 9 hours in one day. So usually with our recording sessions, we go about 4 or 5 hours, and that still leaves a good amount of room on the SSD itself, so the files aren't too big. So I use Adobe Premiere Elements, not Premiere Pro, just because I don't have to keep paying a monthly or yearly subscription thing. I just paid once for this. It has most of the functionality I need, nothing too complicated. It was a little harder to learn than AVS, but it's a lot better than AVS because it doesn't crash as much. It's a bit better at doing certain things than AVS was, and I like it so far. Like I've used it for I think at least a year now by this point. So basically, get your tracks down here. So I'll just go ahead and so I add my video, my game capture first. So add files on my D drive, which is where all my videos go to. It's a hard drive, 2 terabytes. Recordings, OBS. See the different folders I have set up. I have Uno set up, there's other, and then Apex, and then Overwatch. I'm going to be recording, or I'm going to be editing an Overwatch video next. So Overwatch. Now at first this kind of confused me, the way it saves the title, because these are the titles that it saves it by. But if you can like kind of common sensely look at it, you can see, oh, it's recorded on 1024, 1028, and that's how I keep them separated. So just go by the least recent one, so like the furthest one back, if that makes sense. This one here. We want to open that up, drag it down here to video 1 and audio 1. It'll preload that down here or conform it and all that. Then I go to Audacity. This is how I pull out my mic audio, because if you try to play the video itself from the OBS folder, this is what you hear. Nothing. You can see that it's not muted. Fuck you! See? And there, right there. So, playing the file through the desktop or like Windows Movie Maker or whatever plays my mic audio. But, in Adobe, it plays the game audio instead.
Cheers.
Or the desktop audio, which includes a Discord. So in order to pull my audio out and make it its own line, which is what I prefer, I use Audacity to open the same exact file, this one right here. And here's the two different audio tracks. Remember, I had two audio tracks saved. The one at the top here is the desktop audio. The one at the bottom here is my mic audio. So I'll just click that one, press OK, and it'll pull that, import it, and make it where I can export it. This usually takes anywhere from a couple minutes to up to like 7 or 8 minutes for like a good hour and a half for a long video or so. So I'll just give that a second to import. And once that's imported, you can see here, this is in the entire audio track. You can see times I've spoken or shouted in it. It's usually a lot more variable than this. So obviously I wasn't talking a lot in this one, but we also played with other people, so I don't usually talk as much. So go up here at File, Export. Export as WAV is what I exported it as. And under each OBS folder, I have a separate audio folder I put all the audio into. So I'll see that there. This usually takes no more than like 10 seconds. No matter if it takes a minute or 10 minutes to import it, it only takes like 15 seconds to export it, which is nice. Now we can close that without saving. Add media again. Go to the audio folder, import that. Bring that down to the voice line down here. Expand it so I can see all the times I've spoken, which just helps me. Then I'll add media again. This is where I add the whoosh sound. So with my transitions, the little whoosh sound that goes with it is not with the just transition itself. It's a separate audio file that I have on the computer that I have to import and add every time I do that transition. So it's in Projects, Sounds, Whoosh. I think that's where I got it from. I know the file used to be called E1Whoosh, so if that helps you find it. Just a simple little audio thing I add. I like to put it in this top right box here, so I can just easily open this right here, grab this, bring it down, and it boppity-boopy. Now I usually add my webcam footage in, because right now recording on the camera, I'm recording directly to the SD card. Then I have to pull that off with one of these little USB SD card readers, because my computer tower doesn't actually have an SSD card reader, which is fine. This is only like, I think, $10 or whatever. And importing can also take a while. But like I said, all this is probably going to change soon, because I just ordered a Elgato Camlink 4K that hopefully is going to work with this camera, so I can record the webcam overlay directly to OBS, which will save a lot of time. Anyway, so currently this is how I'm doing it. So I'll go back to videos, recordings, gaming webcam. This is from 1024, so I'll go here. I've already broken it down by game. So if I go back here and so go to this folder here, it's just all random audio blips I gotta organize. The unfortunate part about that too is it's very hard to separate what is what. Although for the most part, if it's between Apex and Overwatch, it's easier because I only play Apex on keyboard and I usually only play Overwatch on controller. So if I click it and I'm sitting up like this and I hear clicking on my keyboard, I know I'm playing Apex. If I'm kind of leaned back a little bit or I'm kind of like slumped down and it's obvious my hands and arms are like lower, I know I'm holding a controller in my lap. Makes it very easy. But recently with playing new games, it's a little bit harder to distinguish, so I usually just have to play it long enough to see what I talk about. And then I usually kind of relate that to the game and also by the day. The day helps, obviously. It's harder to go by times. Like I can't just say, oh, this video is 36 minutes and 54 seconds long. It's just fun on audio. Well, a webcam footage that's that long. But the problem with that is this camera records in 4 GB chunks, so it's 16 minutes max. So you have to add all this together, and it's just a lot easier just to click it, see what I'm doing, see what I'm saying, and then relate that to the game. So this is from 1024. Like I said, I've already determined this is Overwatch footage, and just to verify at first, so this is 32 minutes plus 4 minutes, 36 minutes. Lines up with the time of this clip. I go by number first, so 374 would be first. Open that up. It's gonna cache it down here again, which also helps to have that cache saved to an SSD, which I do. Now the tricky part here is lining up the audio. So what I do is zoom in. This is the zoom function. I press shift to select both of these, slide them over, because I always start the camera before I record in OBS and I always end it afterwards. So I know that the OBS footage is smaller than the camera footage. Go ahead and drag that into audio and video 2. And again, this is the hard part, is lining up the audio, because I don't do any kind of like clap test or whatever. I probably should, but I don't, because here's what I do. So I have my audio, my voice audio here, the camera audio here, and I try to look for a section where I was talking a lot that I could use to sync up the audio. Looks like the best areas right in here, so I'll go zoom in on this. And unfortunate thing about this one, this particular footage, you see I'm not facing the camera because my little brother walked in the room. So you can see here in the camera audio, there's a lot of like audio. On OBS and my mic, it's not, because I muted myself. Unfortunate for my syncing, but probably good for the video, because I don't want that audio in there. Anyway, but I have this little area right here I can zoom in on. Okay, I see there's a blip here, so I'll drag this over to where I think it's right. I'll mute the game audio and see how well it syncs up by playing it. Oh! Okay, it's not. You can see you can tell it's out of sync, so I'll just play around with the position. Oh! Until it sounds like that, where it basically sounds like I'm using just the mic. And I usually confirm by a couple more little blips, which is not going to be in that particular instance. You see down here is another couple of blips.
Sorry, hello?
It's not. See, that's not in sync. Somehow pull it back.
Sorry, hello?
There we go. Now I trust that over the previous one because that's a longer blip of sound. Usually this part's a lot easier because there's at least one part in every video where I talk a little longer. But again, we were playing with other people in this video, so I didn't talk as much. But once I have that lined up the first time, the rest of the video is fine, because I can always add the rest of my audio clips from the webcam or from the camera right against this one. It's gonna line up just fine until the rest of the video. So now I go back to the beginning and zoom in all the way in, and I delete all the camera footage from before the video started. Clear that, zoom out a bit, right click this, delete the audio, collapse that. And now I add my red border that I have for my webcam, which is in videos, projects, red border. This is a perfect square shape, as you can see. So this just allows me to have a border for my camera, webcam area, and two, to make sure the footage is always in the same area. So I'll shrink it down to just a random size, it looks fine. Bring it over to the middle, and then I have to get a shot of me sitting in the chair, facing the camera. Oh yeah, first I have to extend this, zoom out. extend this all the way to the length of the OBS video. Again, I have to see like this. I have to be looking at the camera. I don't know why this particular camera footage is so blurry. I noticed that a while ago while I was setting up this video. I just make sure everything opened, and I noticed how blurry it was. Usually not that blurry. Hopefully it doesn't come across as blurry on the end result. If any of this original footage stays in, it doesn't always stay in. Anyway, so see me facing the camera here. Now I have to crop the webcam to the square. So go to the effects tab over here, make sure I'm in video. Search for crop. Bring that over to the footage. It's gonna pre-crop it in a stupid way. So basically I gotta go a little bit off my shoulders. I usually also use a chair as like a border too. It's like a buffer. So bring it in, bring the bottom in a bit, bring the top in a bit. Shrink it down to fit inside. This usually takes a little bit of playing around with as well. But like that. And I collapse that. Pull it back all the way in, all the way over here. Now I'm ready to start actually playing it back and editing everything. And before I do that, I'll make sure I save it. I have a separate folder for my projects. You can see Apex, Overwatch, Uno, and then random videos. So Overwatch. And I just save it with a number. I just added another number, I just add 1 to the number for the file. It's a lot easier to keep up with just a random number than it is a different title, because I usually don't come up with a title until after I'm editing, which is kind of obvious. You can't really know what the video is about until you know what's in the video. So I'll say this is 13, which is the next number in the sequence. Save. I have autosave on for every 10 minutes, and I'll start editing. So I'm gonna get to a good point to show you guys a couple of other things, and then I'll get back to you. Alright, I'm back. So, been editing for a few minutes now. I have the beginning set here, so for the fade effect you see at the beginning and end, I just kind of select everything with shift, right click, fade in audio and video. It's gonna put the video track point here closer to like down here, so I'll just pull them all up to be in line with the audio one. You see my voice track is not here on this part because there was a lot of background noise. I just cut it out. I wasn't really talking again anyway. But I have the nice long fade in here. I have the first clip here with a little bit of sound at the end. So I'll zoom in on this part here. So here's the end of the first clip that I wanted to save. And here's some random, like where I respawned, walking back and all that. So I'll zoom in on this area. So here's the start of the next clip. It's around here, so I usually back off a little space here. Select all 4, cut. Select all 4, delete, and close gap. It's a very handy little feature here. Let's go back over to the transition area. Here's where I add a transition. But usually to find out what transition I want to use, I will see how the transition is naturally. So it kind of started with a still image type, and it goes to me walking and turning. So over here, this is transitions. There's several you could use, but with going through, I just went through a bunch of them one day and started using them more and more. It'll automatically save it to frequently used tab. You can go to here. Here's all the ones I use. Generally, I save the center peel for like play the games in Overwatch, just because that's kind of like a very cinematic transition. Zoom I don't use as much either. That's why it's at the bottom here. I mainly use these 6, and I only use the whoosh sound effect with split, spin, swap, and slide. Film, dissolve, and wave, I don't put the audio in because it doesn't sound right. I don't really have a general rule for transitions other than the sound bit, but also sometimes I like to do a split if like the pace of the game changes. I want like a split in the gameplay. Or if I want a fast transition, I usually go for split. For wave, I like to do if it's like also changing, if like the gameplay changes but the pace doesn't really change, I'll use the wave. If it goes from like a still type image to a still type image, I'll use slide, because if I try to use slide and I'm turning at the end of the transition, it doesn't really look right. And then swap and spin away, I like that, like still in there randomly. I also like to use film dissolve in Apex, and I'm walking at the end of one clip, and then I'm walking also in the beginning of another. It just makes a very smooth transition. For this one, there's no real gameplay change or pace change. I'll probably just use spin away. Drag it here on the audio 1 line, make the duration 0.5 seconds, apply. Go period of my whoosh, drag that in to the top here. I line up the right side here because if you extend this, you see that the audio blip actually is almost perfectly in line with where the clip actually changes, which is nice. And then to make sure that the webcam area doesn't just carry over weirdly, I'll select these two, fade out video, and drag the transition phase to the beginning of the transition on video 1. Same thing on the other end, except I will use fade in video. And that's how you get that transition. And you can see, even though I previously aligned my webcam, it's now out of line. Usually that happens because I was like turning in my chair. And so I guess when I found the first point, I was like this. So I was leaning back like this. And now that I've actually turned forward more, it looks like it's off to one side. Which is easily fixable actually, because you can go back in here. Was it in the split up too? It was. So I just click this. This is the edit effects. I can click this. Drag it over. Play with the crop a little more. And then back to something that looks a bit more natural. And since I split it here, I have to do the same thing to this side. Now also in talking about cropping the camera footage is when I splice in, like when I get down here to this part and I have to add it back in, obviously I'm not gonna be able to get the exact same zoom level and like cropping and all the parts. So usually I'm not saving a part that is at the transition point because it's very obvious once it changes. As close as I try to get it, it's very obvious to me at least. But like I said, unfortunately, it doesn't happen to be at a point that I'm saving. So even if the camera like angle or zoom or crop changes, it's usually after a transition anyway, which you're gonna focus on like that aspect of it. But I will show you guys that as well. So I'm gonna go back to editing this and see you guys in a bit. Background might change, but I'm still working on this video. As you can see, I've got the end of this sound clip from the camera, or I guess the video clip from the camera. I'm just going up here. See, the last one's 374. Add media, recordings, 375. I got it right beside it. So again, it's still under the red border that I added here. So just gotta delete the audio. Move over again to where I'm in frame. Apply the crop filter. Recrop it. Almost perfect. Yeah, it's okay. I could zoom in more. But you'll see here what I'm talking about with the change. So that's what it looks like there. And if I go over here, you can already see it's different, but you'll see the change as it plays here. Boom. So if I was just going to save this part, which I'm not, that change would be very obvious. Usually it works out to where that's not the case. Sometimes it is. And other things I do, so up here, little tools. So anytime I zoom in on something, I use this pen and zoom tool, which defaults to 2 frames. I just delete the second one and then resize the first one to wherever I want. Freeze frame if I end up wanting to like freeze the frame on something and insert a little note or something. And then recently I've been playing with the audio effect called low pass, which is where it has that muffled sound. So when I zoom in on my face or something, I'll use that for the game audio, so it sounds like muffled. I think it's kind of cool. I can already see here now how to get like the crop quite right, because you can see a little edge in game. So again, easy, just go in here, extend the left side back, and it's fixed. So now I've relaunched Adobe Premiere Elements to show you guys how I export. I'm going to open up my previous project, export, to show you how I export that, because it's already exported, so it's already kind of set up. But luckily it's very convenient to do that, because I can just open here, go to File, Recent Project, and there's the last one there. And I forgot that I always change once I'm done editing using a clip for edit, I move it to a folder called Already Uploaded, so that when I need to go back and make space on my drive, I just go to that folder and delete everything in there. Makes it a lot easier, but also makes it a little hard, because I have to try to open a file that's already been moved. It's going to ask where the files are at. Alright, so a little heads up, if you guys didn't watch that last episode, there's a little blip at the end I added. You can see here at the end of the main part, I faded it out again with the same effect. So now if I go up here to File, Export and Share, Devices, Custom, I have two presets, YouTube 1080p, YouTube 1440p, just basically changes the resolution over here. So I have 1440p, which is my usual export. H.264 format, 60 frames. AC, I think, is something about audio, of course. So max kilobit for that, 320, 48 hertz stereo. There's duration, and then a bit rate, and then I just again save it as a number in an export folder that is the game that I was playing under all time in output. So it's its own. I have all my outputs going into a separate folder, and based on my experience, that depends on, of course, how long the video is, how complicated it is, being as in how many video layers I have. So here I have 3, which is basically just 2 with an image on top, and I'm getting around 0.24, 0.25 time, meaning the length of the project, I guess for you, length of the project divided by total time it takes to export. And when I'm exporting, I open up this right here, Hardware Info 64, as well as a stopwatch on my other monitor, so I can see. I'll show you. So I have my own little file in Google Sheets saved to my drive of every time I've exported, for the most part. I had a messy organization up here, but I've gotten better. So I have the date, length of the video. I converted that to minutes, so it's like 9 minutes 51 seconds. I converted that to 9.85 minutes, just for easier calculations. The max CPU boost, the maximum RAM usage, the maximum CPU die temp, and then the saturated temp, which is basically just the average throughout the export. The total time it takes to render, and the thing I'm calling factor is just that length of the project divided by the time it takes to get me a factor. And then any kind of notes I add over here, like when my video was, what I was doing in the background, like up here, I'd always say I was running Chrome, which is usually what I do. I just watch YouTube videos while it's up exporting. Just as a note to say, like, hey, you know, there might be a little bit higher RAM usage because I'm running Chrome or whatever. You can see down here, that particular video that I was just showing you guys for export, 20 minutes 34 seconds, converted to about 20.57 minutes. My boost on my CPU is locked at 4.15 gigahertz overclock. I use 14.53 gigs of RAM, which is about on average. I'm using anywhere from about 14 to 16, 17 gigs on export. Saturated temp has been staying around the mid 70s, with the average saturated temp being somewhere in the high 60s. Anytime it deviates from any of those, I highlight it in purple. You can see if it dips, you know, in the 60s for max temp, or if it goes above 20 for RAM usage. And you can see here, if it's blue, it was below about 0.4243, because that was the average I was getting up here when I first overclocked my CPU. I consider that kind of my baseline. Anytime it was above that, I highlighted in red. So you can see here is a lot of blues, and that's because I've added the webcam and the border. So like I said, more complex file, more layers, it will take longer. So then it takes so then the factor is smaller. So then once it's done exporting, like I said, I'll move the files over to a different folder so I don't have to worry about it taking up space. I can just go in and delete later. I just typically upload to YouTube. I have a lot of stuff preset, like any kind of filters or maturity settings. I have my links in the description preset. And then as far as a thumbnail, I use GIMP because it's free and somewhat easy to use. I've been able to learn most of what I want to do with the program. So for the most part, I just open up. I have a separate folder for GIMP. I'll just go to this 2560 by 1440p black rectangle I use for like the base of the thumbnail. And then I'll go in here and add other images as layers. So you see the, like Bloodhound, Caustic, all the different ones I've used in the past. And so this takes a little bit of playing around with. I just export this as a regular image and upload that to YouTube as a thumbnail, and then boom. I think that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much how I record, edit, and upload my videos, at least for now. Hope you guys enjoyed that little tidbit about my editing routine, and I will see you guys in the next one.